Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third annual breakfast and our second Luminous Heart Award. My name is Reverend Brad Learmonth. I'm the president of the board. Closer to the mic. I'm the president of the board, who can now be heard, and I'm thrilled to be in this position at this time of significant growth for One Spirit Learning Alliance. I want to thank Sarah Stoker and Betsy Scott for securing this venue for us for the third year in a row. It's been quite a beautiful place to be, and we want to thank you for that. I want to thank Richard Miner, our graduate engagement officer, for so beautifully organizing this event again. And I want to thank our amazing and devoted staff, who many of whom are here, who are led by our fearless and flawless CEO, Eileen Samuth. And of course, my fellow board members, I want to thank you for your support and your presence here today. Thank you. What a blessing to have Marianne Williamson with us today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your incredible schedule to be with us and for your longtime support of One Spirit. And we are doubly blessed because we have last year's honoree with us today, Rabbi David Ingber. Thank you for being with us. Lastly, but certainly not leastly, I want to thank all of you for being here, whether you're long-term supporters of One Spirit through years of contributions in whatever form those take, or whether you're new to us and want to learn a little bit more about what we do. So, who are we? Why are we here? And what do we do? Conceived in the wake of 9/11, there was a call to deeper service by our founder and spiritual director, Diane Burke, and One Spirit was born. It opened its doors in August of 2002, and for 16 years we have been a force in the evolving spiritual evolution of this planet. Our strength lies in the focused response to the transformational age that the entire planet is involved in. Simply put, we provide world-class training and ministry, and for ministry and counseling for the 21st century, that offers individuals the means by which they can develop and activate their deepest inner inquiry and their callings to service. Our programs embody heart-centered experiential training that is philosophically grounded and pedagogically rigorous. In a world that is all too easy to be seen as gone mad and separate, One Spirit exists to create that space where the heart can open, the mind can expand, and we can share the common thread of our humanity through compassionate action. We have a 2-year seminary program committed to interfaith dialogue and interspiritual philosophy. We have a 2-year counseling program that trains individuals to be in the service of helping others to realize their whole selves, no matter what their spiritual beliefs. I am a very grateful graduate of both of those programs, and I can testify to their profound impact on both my life and my work. We also have a robust roster of elective workshops open to all and new programs on the horizon, which you'll learn about later in the program. Everything we do is grounded in our foundational belief in the intentional embodiment of service, whether in faith communities such as churches or out in the streets, in hospitals, community centers, and more. From first responders to long-term care, One Spirit's hundreds of graduates span the globe in offering fearless and compassionate service. Most importantly, as we take the next steps in our growth, our focus is on what spirituality and thus spiritual service means for new generations. With growing numbers of people seeking new ways of spiritual connection, we offer a place to discover and to learn. And now to bring us to the next part of our program this morning, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our founder and spiritual director and my dear friend. Diane Burke has been a leader in the field for over 30 years and is a widely respected pioneer in the developing interfaith interspiritual ministry education. One Spirit alone among her many, many achievements is the largest of its kind in the U.S. with a growing international presence. Will you please help me give a warm welcome to Diane Burke?
Thank you. It is my pleasure now to introduce our honoree for this year, my friend Marianne Williamson. Marianne is an internationally acclaimed speaker, activist, and author. I've been blessed to know Marianne personally for more than 25 years. I've been inspired by her brilliance and her passionate commitment to teaching that we can choose love over fear. I've also been the recipient many times of her deep and enormous generosity of spirit and heart. Marianne was born and grew up in Houston. In her 20s, she discovered A Course in Miracles, a spiritual path that empowers us to move from fear-based thinking to love-based thinking through the practice of forgiveness. Marianne moved to Los Angeles in the early 1980s and began giving motivational lectures based on the teachings of the Course, eventually giving weekly lectures in both LA and New York. She also became involved at that time in awareness and advocacy efforts for HIV and AIDS patients. Marianne created 2 organizations, the Los Angeles and Manhattan Centers for Living, that provided free mind, body, spirit healing and support services to people living with AIDS and other life-threatening illnesses. In 1989, Marianne founded Project Angel Food, a Meals on Wheels program for homebound people with AIDS. And that project has to date delivered more than 11 million meals. In 1992, Marianne published her first book, A Return to Love. How many of you have had your life changed by A Return to Love? Yeah, many, many, many people. The book came to the attention of Oprah, who gifted her studio audiences with free copies of the book and featured Marianne on her program, catapulting Marianne into the public spotlight. Marianne has gone on to write 11 more books. 6 of them have been on the New York Times bestseller list, and 4 of them have been New York Times #1 bestsellers. Marianne's teachings have always focused on integrating spirituality into our practical, everyday lives. And she has called us to live more nobly and more responsibly, to move beyond egoic self-centeredness, to become agents of peace, healing, and transformation in the world, in our relationships, in our workplaces, in our families, in our communities. Since the publication of her book, Healing the Soul of America, more than 20 years ago, Marianne has also been a powerful and tireless advocate for applying spiritual principles and perspective to the serious social problems that plague us collectively. Problems of racism, inequality, poverty, and the politics of aggression and division. She cares passionately about democracy and about the kind of world we will leave for future generations. And she calls us to show up with fierce courage and unwavering commitment to the power of love to heal and transform the challenges that face us. Her newest book, A Politics of Love, Handbook for a New American Revolution, will be published in April. On January 28th, Marianne announced her candidacy for the presidency in 2020. And in making her announcement, she said, "It is time for us to rise up the way other generations have risen up." Sometimes people are so cynical these days. Cynicism is just an excuse for not helping, and whining is not an option. That's so Marianne. For her outstanding, heart-centered contributions to humanity, I am honored this morning to present to Marianne Williamson One Spirit's Luminous Heart Award.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's particularly wonderful to be here in New York. I first read The Course in Miracles, as Diane said, when I was in my 20s here in New York, and it has been such an important part of my life and of my career. Diane mentioned that we have known each other for over 25 years. There's a line in The Course in Miracles where it says, "From this point forward, you will not be alone, for you will be joined by mighty companions." And I think Diane and I were talking earlier, we have recognized each other. We always recognized each other. We just recognized each other. And one of the things that I have always so admired about Diane, and one of the things that has made me someone, and I felt the same from her, will you do this? Yes, there's not even a question, has to do with what Brad was speaking about before in terms of rigor. Whether you're a student of A Course in Miracles or a student of any of the kinds of things that Diane is holding forth here at One Spirit, there's a level of intellectual rigor and understanding, whether it's of A Course in Miracles or any of these other studies and practices and traditions and religions that we are studying. And so when we come at these things, you can't get to Carnegie Hall without practicing. And that's what I so admire about Diane. If we just have the head without the heart, then we are a disconnected world, and that's very dangerous. But if we just have the heart without the head, it's not the kind of depth that is needed to transform us as individuals and transform us as a society. Clearly, Diane's study, her intellectual study, her discipline, her rigor around the principles that she not only teaches but then practices and embodies, which is the ultimate teaching, that is the intersection, that is the transformative vortex, not only in our lives but in our society. And of course, she brings that forth with One Spirit. So that's what I've always recognized. That's what I have always believed in. I think we're all, The Course in Miracles certainly talks about how we can give it all different names. We can look at all the various ways that the spirit of love forms itself and expresses itself in the world. But it is the oneness of that spirit, the oneness of that love that is most important. But it's a process that we have to go through. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to address it within ourselves where we are not in the space of love. It's another thing to address not only how we come across in the world, but also the work that we do in the world, the ministry. And when we have places like One Spirit that not only can teach us what the principles are, but that forms a very practical, in the Course in Miracles, it talks about this is a practical course. One Spirit is so important because it not only teaches the principles and demands the rigor, but then also gives everyone who is part of this work an opportunity in your own lives to take it out into the world. That's what ministry is. Whether you're working with the sick and the dying, whether you're coaching corporate clients, or whether you actually are a clergy person, it's all the same work. And I believe, and my life and my career at this point has only convinced me further. This is the underground nourishment. You know, you can't heal the world or any aspect of the world. It's much like a plant. You can't just water the leaves. You have to water the roots. Spirituality is a watering of the roots. It's the nourishing of the soul that leads to the betterment of the personality, which leads to the clarity and the love that we can become as conduits of love and of God. And when we have teachers among us who lay it down not only with what they understand but with what they embody, it's such a blessing. And Diane has been such a blessing on me for that very reason. Such a sense that when I see Diane, it's two sisters who have come together. And so for me to receive this honor is lovely to be here, but I'm more than glad to honor one spirit and to honor Diane Burke and the work that goes on here. And I'm excited to be in conversation with her, with you. Thank you. Thank you. Cool? You go up there now? Thank you. Thank you.
Marianne and I will be in conversation for a little while, and then we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions of Marianne as well. Probably most of the people in this room know something about Course in Miracles, but there may be some who are hearing about it for the first time. How would you describe most simply what the Course teaches and why it's been so meaningful to you?
Well, that certainly is a question that we should take together, because I know that you yourself are a student of the Course in Miracles, and I think some people in the room I know are as well. So I know I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. A Course in Miracles is not a religion. There's no doctrine. There's no dogma. It has been referred to, I think it was Jerry Jampolsky who called it a self-study program of spiritual psychotherapy. The Course calls itself a psychological mind training. And as Diane had said before, the attainment, the goal of the Course is the attainment of inner peace through the practice of forgiveness. It is, as I said, not a religion, no dogma, no doctrine, but it is based on universal religious themes. And that's where something like one spirit, if you talk about Judaism or you talk about Christianity or you talk about Islam or you talk about Buddhism, you see these universal spiritual themes in all the great religions and spiritual practices of the world. So in the Course in Miracles, it uses traditional Christian language. But I think I want to take that back. It's not so much that it uses traditional Christian language, it uses Christ-centered language, because it is not the Christian religion, and these terms are used in very psychotherapeutically, wouldn't you say that, oriented ways, so that people, when the Course in Miracles talks about God's plan for the salvation of the world, he says God's plan is the plan of what the Course calls the teachers of God. And it says the teachers of God come from all religions and no religion. They are those who have heard the call. And it says that the call goes out all the time in all of us, this voice for God. In both Judaism and in Christianity, there's the same phrase as in the Course, the small, still voice for God. So when the Course in Miracles talks about teaching, it talks about demonstrating. So God's teachers are everywhere. And as I was saying before, you could be coaching clients in corporations, you could be dealing with the death and the dying, you could be in the military, you could be a teacher, it doesn't matter the form of our ministry, what matters is the content. And just as every cell in the body is assigned through a kind of natural intelligence, whether it's to the lungs or to the liver or to the heart, each and every one of us, the Course in Miracles says, are assigned in ways that we can't know necessarily how our talents and abilities would best be put to use in the larger picture of God's healing. But the more we practice through meditation, through prayer, through whatever our practice is, the more we are able to hear the guidance of that small, still voice. And then we are sent out to do whatever we're sent out to do, however crazy it might seem at the time. And the Course, and the Course in Miracles does say that what the Holy Spirit says to you will often seem quite startling. And so I think that everything that I just said about the Course in Miracles, of course, we see expressed in all the great religions of the world, and I don't think anything is more important now than our recognizing those universal themes and values at the heart of all the great religious systems.
One of the teachings that I love most in the Course says a universal theology is impossible, meaning we will always have different creation stories, different salvation stories, different ways of thinking about the divine. But although a universal theology is impossible, the Course says a universal experience is not only possible but necessary. And that experience that the Course is offering to us, which brings with it the peace of God that passes all understanding, is the experience of recognizing that we are not, in fact, separate from each other, from the source of our being, or from our own true nature and our own inherent goodness and wholeness. So one of the questions, of course, now, Marianne, in what you're doing is, how do we bring that understanding into our public discourse, which is, at the moment, seemingly the opposite of much of that?
Well, as you know, in A Course in Miracles terms, you're not bringing anything. You are seeking to demonstrate something. And I feel in our public discourse, it's no different than in our private discourse. What's going on out there in the society is no more crazy, fractured, and dysfunctional as what's going on inside us. So A Course in Miracles says the first place you have to address that is within yourself. And that people hear you, the Course says, on the level that you speak from. So if I'm living in the chaos within myself, I can't have much of a transformative effect on the chaos in the world, because my chaos calls up your chaos. But the Course in Miracles is about the attainment of inner peace, so that then as a teacher of God, once again a demonstrator of God, you are sent into the world. Public discourse, the craziness of our political public discourse, is no different than any other aspect of our institutional and mortal realities that is off. It's disconnected from the heart. It's disconnected from our wisdom because it's disconnected from that experience, common experience. So the Course in Miracles, as you know, I think one of the greatest blessings of the Course is it's not about being grandiose. It talks about the difference between grandeur and grandiosity. So as a Course in Miracles student, because we're all teachers and we're all students, we're not taught to think we're out to bring anything. We're not bringing anything. But we can stand wherever we are led and be what the Course in Miracles calls the presence of the alternative. That's what the miracle worker is. That's what we're all here to be in whatever area you're sent. And this is whether as a parent, as a spouse, as a lover, as a friend, as a citizen, or as someone working in your field. You're simply there to be the presence of an alternative way of thinking and being. And then that has a transformative effect. And it's not anything you are trying to do, because the Course in Miracles is consciously selected miracles can be misguided. You're just standing within the space of that alternative, which is of itself a repudiation of the thinking of the world. It is itself a light, because the Course in Miracles defines light as understanding. So you are standing in the space of a deeper understanding. And that has a subconscious effect on those around you, because there's really only one mind. There's only one of us here. So if I'm standing in a different space, you register it. You might register it consciously, which the Course describes as you have a light in your eyes and they have a light in their eyes and you see each other. Or it might be that somebody has no idea where this comes from in you, but they can feel something different. And that's where the Course does not use this language. But in AA, they talk about attraction, not promotion. You're just standing in a different place. And then the Course in Miracles says some who will have no idea where that light in your eye comes from will still register on some level and will probably wonder where it comes from. But the point is, there's nothing in you that doesn't exist in them. And by you standing in it, that which is that in other people is brought up. It's really what was happening when Jesus said, Lazarus, rise. Because if I am risen, because that's all it means to be risen above the thinking of the ego, above the thinking of the small separated self, in your presence, and I think that's why that one paragraph from A Return to Love has been so popular. As you are liberated from your own fear, your presence automatically liberates others. We literally remind each other. And that's what in the Eastern religions, they talk about the effect of a superior personality. Just someone who is demonstrating something which we all know, yeah, that's it. Whether we agree with that person or not. And I think we're living at a time where somebody's ego writ large is making a lot of people go, that's not it.
I think one of the things that I also love about the Course is that it asks us to be very, very, very honest with ourselves, and that the work that we need to do always is the inner work of, as Jesus said in the Gospel, first removing the log from our own eyes so that we can see clearly how to help our neighbor. And the Course points out more than once that if we're focusing on someone else's ego, we must be looking through our own.
Yeah, only the ego can. I love that when I see people say, Marianne, you're coming from ego. Only your ego could point out my ego. Silly.
So how would you describe what it's like to move from a place of suddenly realizing from your own inner reactions and reactivity, I've been looking at this person's ego through my ego, to moving to a different vision and way of looking at that same behavior, that same person, but from a place of what the Course means by forgiveness?
Well, the Course in Miracles, as you know, says, think what you were thinking about a person that God would not be thinking. And think what God would be thinking about that person that you were not thinking. The Course in Miracles gives us a set of principles that are part of what the Course in Miracles calls our problem-solving repertoire. So there are certain principles. What are you thinking about a person God would not be thinking? What would God be thinking that you are not thinking? Another one is only what you are not giving can be lacking in any situation. So this rigor we were talking about, you're in an upset with another person, and the Course says, this is not about them. It's only the ego that's talking about them. The spirit, the Course in Miracles says, you pay a very high price for not taking 100% responsibility for your own life experience. The price you will pay is that you can't change it. So the only way I can change this situation with you, my ego is going to say, no, this will change when you act differently. No, this will change when you see it the way I see it. And the Course says, no, it's always about you. God would not be saying, you know, I love that person, but his narcissism is just over the top. Right? That's you. And we have a lot of societal permission these days through all these fancy words like narcissism to disguise our judgment and pretend that it's psychological perspicacity. Because I can give such a fancy word because I read a whole book about what that thing is that you do. So, and it's not that book might not have been incorrect, but still the ultimate work, even if it is correct. And so, you know, and like, yeah, maybe that's true, maybe he is that. So what does that make you that you were there? You know, all of that. So the Course in Miracles, I love the simplicity of it, that that's the transition you were talking about. You transition in your life by going back to principle. That's what I love about the Course. That's the discipline. The word discipline and the word disciple come from the same root. It's the same, go right into principle. Only what you are not given can be lacking in any situation. And you can have a miracle here instead of, you go from, you know, if you would change, this could be fine. And I love one of the biggest ones in the ego. This is one of the biggest ego that I love. I'm just trying to have a relationship with you. If only you would, quote unquote, show up for the relationship. Right? These unbelievable ways that the ego disguises itself, right? So in the Course, what is the miracle? The miracle is a shift in perception from fear to love. But it's not always easy. If you've done, it was a little thing, you insulted me or something, you might talk to me and say, oh, Marianne, lighten up. It's not that big a deal. He's a good guy, and, you know, it's just a moment. And I can say, yeah, you're right, and I can give it up. But maybe what you did to me was a trigger that is deep, and it goes into my childhood, or it goes into my religion, or it goes into my people or my culture, and it's not so easy to give it up. That's when you ask the Holy Spirit's help in whatever the name, the idea that God will help you. So the Course in Miracles says that the altar to God is within the mind. What you put on the altar is then altered. Okay? What you put on the altar is then altered. So you put the relationship in the hands of God. And as you put the relationship in the hands of God, then it is literally, and he says, I cannot take from you what you will not release to me. It would be a violation of our free will. God's not going to come change my thinking or my perception unless I request it. That's in the Course in Miracles. And so we request it, and then it's like when we're in judgment or blame and it's some deep trigger, it's like wires that got crossed so deep down. I want to share an experience I had just the other day where this whole thing of one spirit. I was attending a church service, and it was very moving. And I was actually thinking about the universality. I was thinking about how the experience is just like being in a synagogue, that when you're in that place of religious experience, it's the exact same. And I was very much with it, loving it, and thinking about how, as a Jew, I recognize this, it's the same thing. In the oneness, everything's beautiful. And then the minister got up, well, it was Episcopal, so it would be priest. Then he got up and started talking about Egypt and being delivered from Egypt. It was so interesting the way he wrote the Jews out of the story. You'd think Jesus, now Moses and leaving Egypt was at least 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus. But you would have thought that Jesus led the Jews out of Egypt. That's just not quite the way the story happens, sir. So my ego was really, because it seemed to me, you know, blacks have it's in your cells. You know when you're being written out of the story. You know it's code. It's all the different ways, code for racism. Same with anti-Semitism. And he couldn't even say the word. The Israelites were not there. Moses was not there. So my ego, and it was all within the space of 10 minutes that I'd gone from, wow, I experienced the oneness, to, what just happened to the Jews here? And that it seemed, because he was talking about how Egypt was in Africa, so it was all about blacks in Africa, but wait a minute, because Moses, those were Semitic people, why are we doing this? So I saw my ego get so aroused, and I was thinking about this because it was all within the space of 10 minutes that I went from the oneness and the peace to the ego and my own judgment, and you see it, and you recognize it for what it is, which is, the Course in Miracles says, you think you have many problems, but you really only have one, and that is your separation from God. So the issue is not ultimately to minimize that. The issue is places like one spirit. Because we have, in alchemy, there is this expression, separatio. Things have to be drawn out in order to be lifted to their highest. So we don't want to be a colorblind society. We want to be a society that recognizes the beauty in all the colors. We don't want to be a society where Christianity isn't Christianity, or Judaism isn't Judaism, or Islam isn't Islam, or Buddhism isn't Buddhism, or Hinduism isn't Hinduism. We want to be a society where enough people understand, and that's a beautiful religion too. And that's a beautiful religion too. And that's a beautiful culture too. And that's a beautiful religion too. And that's a beautiful ethnicity too. And that's a beautiful brand of sexuality too. And that's a beautiful nation too. So the art form, and that's why I think places like this are so important. Let us understand each other's. The issue is not to dismiss each other's religion, but to understand each other's religion so that we can all tell the stories in a way that gives mutual respect, so that the people, whether it's color based on color or sexuality or religion or anything else, don't have to get like, which is not only the source of inner wars, but the source of outer wars as well.
Yes, thank you.
And I did give it up. Not only did I give it up, but it is not as surprising to me that it then became material for this conversation.
That's how it works.
And he's a very, very nice man, and he does really great work. And I don't think it's my assignment to have a conversation with him about that. But.
So one of the things that sometimes comes up as a kind of misuse of paths like the Course or some of the other non-dual teachings like Advaita in Hinduism is the mistaken notion that by having the focus be on working with your own thoughts, with your mind, with your choices, that somehow you don't need to also engage in the world. And it's such a tragic misunderstanding of this teaching. So please talk about that.
Well, on one hand, it's a tragic misunderstanding of the teaching, but probably more tragic is it's a misunderstanding on the part of those who are supposedly be practicing this. I have to tell you, with Course in Miracles, and this is why I was talking about the rigor being so important. With the Course in Miracles, I swear there's so many people who read just the first page, and that was it. And so they go, only love is real, and nothing else exists. Well, you're right, that's what it says on the first page. Only love is real, Marianne, only love is real. You're making the illusion real, Marianne, right? Okay, now that's just, read the whole book. Because what the Course in Miracles says is that the teachers of God are sent into the world. That's what the miracle worker is. You are standing within the realm of the illusion, but you are standing there as someone whose mind sees beyond it. The Course in Miracles talks about the difference between perception and knowledge. My physical eyes, my physical ears, the body's senses perceive. The heart knows. So the miracle worker is by definition standing within the illusion. When you're helping someone in hospice, well, does somebody say to you, you know, death is an illusion? Can you imagine if as a hospice worker, you said to somebody who's dying, you know, death is just an illusion. You would never say that to a dying person, right? So by definition, you know, the Course in Miracles says this room is an illusion. By definition, it's within the 3 dimensions, but it's the highest level of thinking of which the ego is capable. So by definition, you're moving into the realm of the illusion. Whether it's politics or business or any of the realms that people are being sent to, your assignment by definition. But the point is to be within the space of the illusion from a consciousness which sees through the illusion, and that is how you help heal the illusion. There's a difference between transcendence and denial. So some people act like, well, I'm not even looking at it. I'm not even looking at it. And then that gives our crowd a bad name. Because people think we're just a bunch of woo-woo people, but that is woo-woo perspective, posing as genuine spirituality, which is why I love you. Because people, you know, it's the real, it is rigorous. So, and there are specific principles. You know, and a lot of times some of the projection onto people like us, which is painful on an ego level, is they think that we're not based on any serious principle, but we are. Whether it's real Judaism, real Christianity, real Hinduism, real Islam, real Course in Miracles, real 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not just made up fluff. So it is by definition that you realize that when you go into the world, wherever you are assigned, and how do you know where you're assigned? You're there. You know, sometimes I'll say to people, oh, I have this insight. I have this deep spiritual insight where you're supposed to be. And I'll say, really, where? And I go, right here, this moment with me. How do I know? Because you're here. This is the moment. It's not in the past. It's not in the present. It's in this moment, because this moment is either, you got to this moment either through the highest, best unfoldment of love on the part of you and others, which took you to this moment. That's one way you could have gotten here, which is a blessing. Or it might be that somebody else's stuff, ego, or your stuff, ego, or both of your stuff, ego, took you to this moment. Either way, your being in total love and non-judgment is either the way, because love brought you here, to take it to the next love, or the way the ego having brought you here to transform it. So God is so great that even if ego brought you here, if you are in total love now, it can be used for God's purposes. So either way, it's being in, either you belong in this space or not, but only if you are here, as he says in the Course, I am only here to represent him who sent me. That you're not bringing your stuff, you're not trying to bring to other people. It's very Eastern in feel. Bill Thetford, as I'm sure you know, called the Course in Miracles the Christian Vedanta. Because it's not, you know how these days people say, okay, what's our intention for this meeting? Which sounds good, but it's really very ego and manipulative. Because if I have an intention for this meeting, I'm trying to figure out, subconsciously at least, how to manipulate you into doing what I want from me to get what I want. That's the problem of the world. It's all transactional rather than transformational. And transformation only comes from relationship. So it's very Eastern when they talk about, in Zen Buddhism, about the empty mind. You're not trying to get anything from anyone. That's the Course in Miracles, right? You were just being in that moment in love. And that makes you a conduit on levels that are beyond the rational mind, beyond the mortal mind. So it's very about emptying. It's very Buddhist in feeling, the Course in Miracles, in the practice. It's about emptying yourself. It's not about filling yourself with a bunch of stuff. It's about practicing an emptiness, which is a void out of which, it is the no thing out of which all things come. And the things that come are things that you could not have even formulated. Things that you could not have even known, oh, that was going to come from that. You weren't trying to make it happen. You are a conduit for the allowance of things to happen. It's not something you're doing. That's why in the psychotherapy booklet, which is part of the course material, it has a profound view of what it calls God's psychotherapists. And in that view of psychotherapy, the person who comes to you is not coming to you to be healed by you. They are a gift to you as much as you are a gift to them. And then for those of you who are into psychotherapy, which from a course in perspective, we are God's psychotherapists, it's a very profound shift from you're going to come to me and I'm going to heal you, to my practice is just emptying myself so much before you sit in front of me and surrendering any judgments I might have of you or your circumstances before you sit in front of me, and that I might bless you and pray for you before you sit in front of me. Then, when you're there, I'm just an open space. And out of that will then come the insight and the words that I could not possibly have known to say or been able to say in a way that was genuinely transformative had I not first emptied myself.
So I think let's open up to some of your questions.
Is your crowd always this polite?
They're pretty polite.
And you want to kiss the microphone.
I would just like to hear your comments on the force of missionaries in the world who attempt to be transformational, but in a very narrow sense compared to your more worldly and inclusive sense.
The Course in Miracles would say that it is not mine to judge. And I had an experience of this when I went to Kenya, because I didn't realize it, but I had some judgments of Christian missionaries in many places for the same reason that you just said. And I felt, and I knew enough about history to know about different places where missionaries seem to be more about cultural annihilation and obliteration of someone's natural religion and culture in the name of helping them. So that's kind of the ego judgment place that I was coming from. And then I saw some churches in Africa where it was just it was undeniable, the beauty that was being brought to these people's lives and the hope that was being brought to these people's lives and the inspiration that was being brought to these people's lives. And I got really strong, Marianne, it's not yours to judge what's happening here. So I've never forgotten that. And also, I think it's important for us to remember the work is always on ourselves. So when we're One Spirit practitioners or Course in Miracles students, and we think we're coming from such an exclusive place, I wasn't coming from an inclusive place when I was judging that priest, right? Because I was judging him for what I perceived was his judgment of Jews. So the work is always on ourselves. So when we say, oh, they're exclusive, but we're inclusive. Also, did anyone see the movie, The Mission? It's such a profound movie. It was made like, what, in the 70s or the 80s? Or if anyone hasn't seen it, it's so profound. And yeah, we always know, I think this is a time. We're not going to get through these times by looking at all the people in the ways that we think they've done it wrong. We need to see it, but see through it. When I talked before, there's a difference between transcendence and denial. The Course in Miracles talks about positive denial, where you do see something, but you deny its power. So as a Course in Miracles student, I'm trained, I'm disciplined to see what you just described. Because it's true. But at the same time, to realize, first of all, Marianne, you don't know what's going on in the heart of all those individuals. You don't know. You can't just lump a whole religion or a whole thing like missionaries. You don't really know what's going on, who was assigned where. That's not your job. You're not here to monitor other people's practice and process. You're only here to monitor your own. That's number one. And number two, how are you doing on that, Miss, you think you're so inclusive? Because because you're not being inclusive at this moment if you're looking at them and judging them. That's the practice of the Course. It's always about ourselves. So clearly there is work such as you would say, describe, that we would not be into, but the Course in Miracles would say it's not your job to judge it, see it, and know that you will do it differently. That makes sense?
I think as well, one of the things that the Course teaches is that we often confuse form and content, and that we can't necessarily tell by looking at something like outer behavior, which is form, what is being expressed and communicated through that. If that work is being done from a place of genuine love, then that work will be transformative and will be a blessing. If that work is being done from a place of superiority, I have something that you are lacking, therefore I'm better than you and I can give you what you're lacking, then in all likelihood it will continue to increase a sense of separation rather than serve a purpose of healing and joining. So the outer behavior doesn't dictate whether it's going to be helpful or not. It's where that action is coming from and what it's expressing that will determine its fruits.
And that work, and you can see that it's always in your own mind, that place where description turns into judgment. We're asked to see, but once again, to see the work within yourself, how convenient it is for you to go into judgment of the missionary.
Thank you for a very enlightening conversation. Did the Course in Miracles ever have a study center on Tanana Lake, Roscoe, New York? And if so, is there something comparable today that one can go study or learn?
What did you say?
Did it ever have a study center in Roscoe?
That would be Ken Wapnick, right?
Yeah. Many places, yeah. The
Beverly Hutchinson and the Miracle Distribution
Miracles
Center.
Distribution Center keeps a list of study groups. These days, if you just Google A Course in Miracles, you'll find the center that was in Roscoe later moved to California and more recently has moved to, I think, Las Vegas or somewhere.
There's a lot of spiritual stuff in
There's a lot of spiritual stuff in Vegas, yeah.
But also Emily Bennington and Robert Perry, a place called the Circle of Atonement. But I also think it bears noting the Course in Miracles is a self-study program. So even though people like yourself, like myself, like Beverly, like Robert Perry, it's like, I always think of myself as like a Russian literature professor. I'm not Dostoevsky, I'm not Tolstoy, but because I've read Brothers Karamazov many, many years, perhaps I can help you access your deeper understanding. It's not, however, a substitute for reading the Russian novel. And so I think with A Course in Miracles, the teacher of A Course in Miracles is called the internal teacher. And it It's inside your own heart and mind every day as you go through these experiences and you read the book. There is a part in the book somewhere it says, these words are holy medicine. And that's true of the Bible. That's true of any great spiritual source material. You just pick it up and you can feel there's a transmission, or Hebrew letters, Sanskrit letters. There's something going on there between you and a holy book. That's, sometimes another person, teaches and helps you access it, but it's what's going on in you while you're reading that. And because the Course in Miracles says everyone has a highly individualized curriculum. And that's the people you meet on any given day, the things you go through, because the Course would say it's not an accident who's sitting next to you. It's not an accident. Anything that you just went through. My friend Mary Morrissey once said to me, I think it's a traditional Christian line, there is no spot where God is not. And that's really the practice of the Course in Miracles. It's not a book. It's what's happening in you. In fact, there's a place in the Course where it says, forget your ideas of good and bad, forget your ideas of right and wrong, forget this Course, and come with empty hands unto your God. The Course doesn't want us to make the Course special.
It also says of itself that it is only one path among thousands, that it is simply one specific form of a universal curriculum. So there's nothing in the Course that says this is the best path or the right path. It's saying if you listen honestly to your own sense of inner guidance and follow that, you will be brought to whatever path, whatever teaching, whatever learning you need to wake up from the misconception that we are simply this small, isolated, fragmented, separated self, and instead to wake up to our greater reality and our true nature.
We have one final question.
Hi there. I find it so fascinating that here we are in the year 2019, and having read your book, Return to Love, and how it was moving from the 90s to the new 2000, we were feeling a spiritual shift. And I find it so fascinating that here we are and having, I just heard that you're running last week, which I was beyond thrilled with, and how fascinating that you're having a different, or we are having a different conversation because of you moving forward. And it's fascinating how we got there and how this situation potentially brought that forward. And I know we kind of talk a lot about the dark and the light and such. My question to you is, how are you, what's that message? I mean, this message and where we are in the world right now, like, how can that be communicated in a way that the most people will hear it from a soul level? Because if you put the word God in a sentence potentially on the presidential stage, you immediately might lose people because of their judgment about their interpretation of God. So how are we going to go about that?
All that a nation is a collection of people. So the same spiritual and psychological and emotional principles that prevail within the journey of one person prevail within the journey of a nation. When Diane began this morning, she talked about how the Course, I don't know if you were mentioning the Course specifically or generally, demands that we be deeply honest. And the Course in Miracles says, a couple of lines I mentioned before, he says, I cannot take from you what you will not release to me. And you cannot bring the light to the darkness. You must bring the darkness to the light. So I'm having a conversation on the campaign trail about, for instance, millions of American children who are trapped in chronic trauma. Millions of them. They go to schools that do not even meet minimum safety requirements. Many of them do not even have functioning toilets. In classrooms where it is not reasonable to assume the teacher could teach them how to read. Where if they cannot read by 8, the chances of high school graduation are drastically decreased. The chances of incarceration are drastically increased. Where psychologists say that the PTSD of a returning veteran from Afghanistan or Iraq is no more severe than the PTSD experienced by these children, although you can't even call it post-trauma with the children because the trauma is triggered and re-triggered every day. These children are not old enough to vote, therefore politicians, they're no constituency. They do not work, they're not old enough, therefore they have no financial leverage. And in the way our government works today, if you're not there with some economic clout, such as corporate clout, you're not a player in what happens. We are practicing, this should be seen as a national emergency. This should be seen as a humanitarian crisis. If one person neglects a child, we call it at best unethical and at worst criminal. We are, as a society, practicing collective child neglect. Now, the Course in Miracles is very clear. Everything is based on what in the East is called karma, or in the West, cause and effect. This is such a profound withhold of love. This is coming back. Now, the Course in Miracles says you are simply asked to see. You are not asked to be perfect. What is the exact line? You are not asked to be, I can't remember the exact line, I'm trying to remember. You're not asked to not make mistakes, but you're asked to see them. Bring them to the light. Atone for them. Be willing to make amends. So that's collective ego on the part of our country. Or whether it's in AA, where you have to take a brutally honest moral inventory and admit your character defects. Or whether you're Catholic and you go to confession, or a Jew on the day of Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the year, the Day of Atonement, or a Course in Miracles student. The Holy Spirit, the Course in Miracles says, brings up for your review where you get it wrong. The Course is not about pouring pink paint. The Holy Spirit doesn't pour pink paint over where you get it wrong. It puts a magnifying glass over where you get it wrong. That's why it seems sometimes things are getting worse rather than better. The Course says they're not actually getting worse. You were just so anesthetized to your own experience before. So America has character defects. One that's been with us from the beginning, one that's only been with us since World War II. One is racism. One is militarism, which is a recent phenomenon. But, so what I talk about in my campaign, it's the same thing. We have to look at this. And I talk about, and it's been a great joy, I have to tell you, I do a whole little thing about American history. I don't think the average American is a racist, but I do think the average American is woefully uneducated about the history of race in America, particularly since the Civil War. And the 100 years of violence of the Black Code laws and the lynchings and the white supremacy and the segregation. And what is so thrilling to me is I will be, in the whitest states, Iowa, New Hampshire, white audiences in South Carolina. And I go through all this, and I talk about how America must atone and must make amends and must continue. And then I finish with, therefore, obviously, we should pay reparations for slavery. And I get massive applause in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina. Now, what that says to me is the American people are not the problem. The consciousness of the American people is not the problem. The problem is that we have a political conversation which isn't authentic, isn't real, isn't speaking to these deeper issues. And so in my campaign, I'm simply talking about if you want to transform your life, you got to look at what's real. Well, guess what? If you want to transform your country, you're going to have to look at what's real. If you're going to transform your life, you're going to have to get clear with God, because if you're doing this ego thing over here, it's going to have an effect until you atone, address it, and get the cosmic reset that is redemption. And that's true at work, whether it's one person's life or 360 million. Now, the joy I'm having so far is that people get this. This is not, you know, by the time someone comes to talk to you, Diane, or to me, things are not necessarily going well. And by the time you've come to something like the minister to talk, the rabbi to talk, someone like us, you've tried all the external things. But that's when sometimes people become their most beautiful, the most noble. And so what I've seen is, and what I feel is the gap that is to be addressed, is we have this political conversation that is totally superficial. Totally, we're not going to get down, we're not going to really talk. And so answers don't come, solutions don't come, because it's just watering the leaves, it's not watering the roots. It's not addressing the deeper places. And so if we're just out here addressing those deeper things with individuals, we will be able to say, when these horrible, catastrophic consequences likely occur, well, we were so clear before the bomb dropped, though, weren't we? We have another example is our you know, and I don't want to go too far into this, just to answer the question. You know, if you call an individual who has no conscience, an individual who has no ethics, an individual who has no remorse for any harm that might come to others because of their actions, what do you call that person? A sociopath. So what do you call an economic system that has no remorse and has no ethics and has no compassion and feels that it gets to justify completely amoral behavior because it's all about economic bottom line and nothing about human ethics? What do you call that? A sociopathic economic system. Americans need to, like, can we get real and talk here? And the same with if you have a national defense policy that is driven more by short-term profit from military contractors rather than for any real agenda to wage peace. So our economic system does not plan for economic good. Our economic system has brought us to the greatest wealth inequality since 1929. If you want to plan for economic good 10 years from now, you take better care of your 10-year-olds today. And if you want to have peace in the world, you don't just prepare for war, you also wage peace by expanding economic opportunities for women, educational opportunities for children, and ameliorating unnecessary human suffering wherever possible. My point in mentioning those things is, how is that any different than any conversation any of us are having about personal transformation? It's the same thing. And so whether you've got to get real, you've got to look at what's really going on. You've got to atone for your mistakes. You've got to ask, is my behavior in alignment with the highest ethical standards and values? And we have deviated from that. We need to not just ask, am I good, but is our society good? And so the beauty for me is that people, this should be common sense. And people are ready. People are not the problem. The problem is that we have a dominant political conversation that doesn't go there because it doesn't want to upset you or it doesn't want to seem negative. And I was saying at the South Carolina legislature yesterday to the Democratic caucus, I said, everybody that is running knows exactly what I'm saying. The difference is I'm saying it. The difference is I'm naming it. Because until I cannot take from you, he says in the course, what you will not release to me. So we have in the United States a tradition, which I think all of us need to respect, of secular conversation within our public political discourse, which is very important that we have because we are a religiously pluralistic society, whether Thomas Jefferson said, whether a man believes in 20 gods or no gods, neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. But what I find is it's the same conversation. I just don't break out in prayer at the end. But I have found such interesting things. I have said things like to some minister or priest or rabbi who will be there, why don't you say the prayer? So that I make sure that there's a prayer being said. It's just that I don't give journalists an opportunity. And then she work out in prayer, which obviously she doesn't understand separation of church and state. Right? Doesn't matter who says it. So that's how I feel. I have felt my entire career that I'm not saying anything everybody I know isn't saying. I'm just saying it when the microphone is on. And I feel and I feel the same way within our public discourse. If you hear that the U.S. Air Force has ordered 100 airplanes called B-21 Raiders at $550 million each, and each one carries both conventional and nuclear weapons. What do we need 100 airplanes that carry nuclear bombs? You drop 5 of those, it's over for human civilization as we know it. 10 of those, it's over for the human race for probably 250,000 years on this planet. Who in this room, who in their right mind would not go, well, that just sounds crazy? That's common sense. We have been knocked out of our common sense. That's just common sense. That's just wisdom. But we have a political conversation over here that's just not talking about that. And that's why, as a person who believes so strongly in the principles of the Course and universal themes, whether as a Jew, as a Christian, as an Islam, a Muslim, as a Hindu, as a Buddhist, or just as an agnostic, as an atheist trying to live a good life, I'm not going into some other area. I'm just having the same conversation in terms of our collective existence, because collectively we cause things that will bring effects just like we do individually. There's a great satisfaction, and I'm sure that's you feel it as well, because not only when you are talking the alternative are you helping to transform one life, but if you've been doing this for as many years as many of us have, it gives you great joy to think, we could transform ourselves, we could transform this country.
Thank you, Marianne. Before we conclude our program, this is a place where it actually is okay for you to break into prayer. And I'm wondering if you would.
Yes, I'd be glad to. Dear God, thank you for bringing us to this moment and to this place. Thank you for all of the blessings that one Spirit has been upon so many people. People who have studied here, have become practitioners, and all of the thousands and thousands of lives that they have touched. And may your light and your hand be upon Diane and all of the people, the board of trustees, directors, the executive director, the teachers. May your Spirit continue to pour forth upon this place. May all who interact with one Spirit or even think about one Spirit be blessed with your peace. And before we leave this place, dear God, we take this moment to send our love to everyone else who is in this room. And now we extend that love to all sentient beings, to all the universes. to all that is. We surrender our lives and pray to be used. May we be conduits of your love. Use our hands and use our feet. May the thoughts we think and the words we say, the places we go and the things we do, represent your love, your peace, your inspiration, and your hope. And may any blessing that we so give be a blessing on those who sent us. May one spirit be blessed, be protected, be lifted up in all ways. May peace and joy be unto its participants henceforth and forevermore. May the ministry of every person here, the things you do to bring hope and peace and justice and love, lift you up and give you peace. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Amen.
Diane Burke, thank you.
Marianne Williamson.